Welcome to Scary Stories. This episode we've got something different for you. I recently got 3 different emails about a large upright bear-like dogman or werewolf running around Manhattan. On the surface, it appears that each of these people are unaware of each other, yet it also seems they might be describing the same creature, possibly even on the same night. Now, I don't know that I'm not having my leg pulled here. Maybe it'll turn out to be publicity for a Dogman in Manhattan movie or a TV series or something. I really don't know if these emails are what they seem to be, or if we're all having our legs pulled. In either case, I enjoyed reading the narrative they present, so I'd like to share it all with you, for your entertainment at any rate. Now, I live within walking distance of each of these 3 stories, and I've never seen any large animal running free around here, other than some of our local politicians, who shall remain nameless. I'm not surprised that the media didn't cover this event if it was in fact real, but it seems to me that someone would have posted a shot of the creature on the internet if it really had been running around the city, even if it was 3 or 4 a.m. or 5 or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong though. It might be an interesting experiment to dress up an athlete in a furry werewolf costume and let him run around Manhattan at night, trying to avoid being photographed. See if there's anything in the news or online by the next morning. I mean, Manhattan is a lot less populated than it was in the before times, so maybe something like this really could happen? In any case, I'm going to put these stories in the order I think they would have had to have happened, if they did indeed occur on the same night. Let's start our trilogy of terror with the story entitled The Bryant Park Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a Dogman story for you that I know you won't believe. Maybe you shouldn't, in fact. I mean, I saw it, and I'm not sure I should believe it. I was walking past Bryant Park in the middle of the night, and I was thinking of how I had read that UFO experiencer Whitley Strieber once had a time slip around that neighborhood, maybe even right where I was walking. He saw that big old building that used to be where the park is now. What was it again? Some kind of pavilion or World's Fair or something? I don't know, because I have never, to my awareness, experienced a time slip. But I did see something strange in Bryant Park on that night, so let me tell you about that. I used to walk my wife's poodle terrier every morning just before dawn, and it was good exercise. When my wife left me for a hip-hop producer, I started sleeping in. Then I got fat. Then I went back to walking around before dawn, this time without the stupid dog. Now, concerning Bryant Park, if you've never been there, there's a sidewalk in the middle of the block, so you can cut between 41st and 42nd Streets and look at the park as you walk. I tend to choose those kinds of places to stroll through in the pre-dawn hours, since I don't have to walk through places the dog can go to the bathroom in any longer. So I was walking down this sidewalk looking over the stone fencing out onto the lawn, and it was entirely empty at that hour, except for one lone figure. I thought I was seeing a very, very large man, and it was hard not to look at him. I couldn't at first figure out what he was doing, and that made him just that much more interesting to me. I walked over to lean on that little wall there and look out at whatever that was. He or it seemed to be digging a hole in the lawn with its back legs, like it was kicking the dirt out of the ground onto a pile. When it seemed to have finished, it then went and picked something up off the ground with its teeth, and it dropped whatever that was into the hole it had dug. By the behavior, I decided I was watching a dog, but this was the largest and strangest looking dog I'd ever seen. After it dropped whatever that was into the hole, it then started pulling dirt over the hole from all directions in an inefficient and somewhat manic manner. I was thinking that whether this is an animal or this is a man, it is not a very smart example of either. It continued to cover the hole with dirt, largely leaving the pile of dirt it had dug up undisturbed. At some point, not having really done a very good job of it, the beast suddenly reared back and stood up on two legs, like a human. But if this guy were a human, he'd have had to have been a 9 or 10 foot tall human, because that's how big this guy looked once he stood up. I must have made some kind of odd noise or sound somehow, because the creature suddenly turned and looked right at me. That made me instantly back up a few steps. I wanted to run, but at my age, I'd have probably just broken something. I kept backing off, occasionally looking downward to make sure I wasn't gonna trip over something. One time, when I looked back up, the dog-headed beastman had left and gone away. Where, I do not know, but hopefully to the outer boroughs. Life is exciting enough already around here, without man-eating werewolves patrolling the streets at night. I'll let you know if I ever again lay eyes on the Bryant Park Dogman. Cops versus Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. Yo, I was in New York City last week, partying it up with my ex-girlfriend and sometimes current girlfriend, when I went to visit her in Brooklyn last week. I can't even remember what we were doing at this one point really late in the night when we were walking around in Manhattan in the Times Square area. I remember they had it set up so you could walk around and you only had to worry about cars when you got to the cross streets. We were over there by that Lion King building, the one between 44th and 45th, and then there was some kind of a commotion. We were in a loose mood, so we ran toward the mayhem, looking for an adventure. Instead, we found a real-life Dogman. My girlfriend didn't know what we were looking at, but I said right off, "Yo, that's a Dogman fighting with that cop over there." I was also already looking around for movie cameras, because I had heard they shoot movies and TV shows really late at night in New York City when there are fewer people around to interfere. I didn't see cameras, but that didn't mean it wasn't being filmed somehow, some way. I was wondering if the cop was real or an actor, and we tried to get closer to the scene. I wanted to get a picture, but there were too many people in the way, and the crowd was freaking out. Just as many people were running toward us as running with us, so I got belly flopped by some overweight tourists a couple or 3 times as I was trying to get closer. I could see parts of what was happening, and then I couldn't, and then I could again. The parts that I caught were worth the entire trip to New York, even if I wasn't able to get any photos or video. It was a Dogman, like on your channel, and it was fighting a cop, but if either was real, I just can't say. My ex-girlfriend says she thinks it was a robot Dogman, like they have those metallic robot dogs you can watch on YouTube. They're really scary because they look like they're alive, but you know they're really robots. In her mind, this was like that, but someone threw a dog costume on top of it. The whole thing happened in such a crazy fashion, and we each only saw bits and pieces, so I can't say that she's wrong. And in fact, she might even turn out to be right. To me, it looked like a real wild animal somehow escaped and got loose in the city in the middle of the night. It was too big to be a man in a costume, and my girlfriend is right in that it did seem as strong as one of those robots. It seemed way too strong for one cop to be trying to take him on alone. Even so, I got the vibe that the creature was as scared as it was scary, because it just kept pushing the cop back, not really trying to hurt him or take him down. I mostly got the vibe that the big creature was in need of some space to sort things out, you know? I've been there, so that's what I was vibing off him. The cop was going after the large, hairy, bipedal monster manimal with his baton, and I don't know if that beast even felt those love taps. This second cop showed up just as the Dogman got fed up and swatted the first one away, tossing him at the crowd that we were in the middle of. Suddenly all hope of forward momentum was lost as people fell backward onto us and we all crashed to the sidewalk. I stood up and saw the second cop pursuing that big bear of a Dogman down past the Lion King Theater, which Google informs me is on 45th Street. I started to run after them when my girlfriend called out to me. She had broken a heel on one of her shoes, and she needed me to get her back to Brooklyn on the subway. So much for my chances of getting a real Dogman photograph. I doubt I'll ever be so close to one ever again. As it ran away down the block, I remember thinking how much bigger it looked than the cop running after it, even though that cop was way closer to me than that Dogman. Since it was running around the theater district at night, both of us feel strongly that it must have escaped from a show business entity of some sort. Maybe it was something meant to be exhibited on Broadway, or maybe it was only being temporarily stored locally. Maybe it belonged to one of the high-powered show business individuals who live and work in that area. My ex has another theory, and she says, maybe it was a werewolf, but I don't believe in werewolves myself. She says it makes more sense to see a werewolf in Manhattan than a Dogman, since a Dogman is a wild animal, while a werewolf is a human who changes. It seems we both have different views of what the term makes more sense even means, since I don't personally ascribe any sense at all to any sentence that has the word werewolf in it. Plenty of wild animals have found their way to New York City, from alligators in the sewers to coyotes and raccoons prowling Manhattan. Of course, the coyotes and raccoons are at least native to the Bronx and regions north of the city, while Dogman is an animal mostly known to exist in the Midwest as far as I know. To me, it seems more likely that we saw something escape from some private collection or something, than that we saw an animal which had strayed down into Midtown Manhattan on its own, by accident. This creature was so big I was wondering what the cop thought he was gonna do if he did catch up to it. Handcuff him? I've been searching on the internet ever since that night, which I guess was the night of the 8th or the morning of the 9th, and I've never found one single mention of anything close to a Dogman in Manhattan on that night. I mean, we both saw this, so it's not like I just imagined it. And we both have an awful lot of questions we'd like to have answered about the night when we witnessed the battle between cops versus Dogman. The Lincoln Tunnel Terror. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I bet you don't get too many Dogman stories that actually happened in New York City, do ya? Well, I've got one for you here. I am not a New Yorker, but I was in town late one night when I saw what had to have been a Dogman, just like you talk about on your channel. It was one of the upright kinds. Well, actually, I saw it run two different ways. So let me just tell you the story, in the order of how it happened. I was driving up Dyer Avenue with the intention of taking the Lincoln Tunnel to New Jersey. It must have been between 4 and 5 a.m., and I admit I was a little groggy. This would have been Wednesday night or early morning on Thursday, so I guess February 9th. I had been on a date that lasted and lasted, but ultimately ended poorly. I had spent a lot of money just to get insulted and rejected, and I was in a mood to get home and get to sleep. When I saw this long-legged bear-type creature running around the corner from my right-hand side, he didn't really even register all that much in my consciousness. It was a huge man wearing some kind of form-fitting fur outfit. You see all types in New York, especially at that hour a little before dawn. So I made a point of not looking directly at him. I didn't want to stare. I mean, I might not be a native, but I know that it's not considered cool to stare at people in wild outfits in New York. You know, they might have just come from a dance club, or they might be a performer or whatever. But the big guy decided to run toward me. He decided to turn left just past my car. And when he turned left just past my car, he cut the corner a little tight, slamming his hand on the front end of my car to balance himself as he made the sharp turn. Yes, I do mean hand, so remind me to get back to that later if I forget. And when that Dogman's hand slammed down, that entire side of the car went down with it. When he released his hold and ran past me and behind, the car's shocks bounced up in the air like it was a lowrider or something. I almost banged my head on the roof of the car, and I heard my neck turning around just to get a look at that big guy. He was so large that it was impossible to see all of him through my windows. He was one of the tallest men I'd ever seen, maybe the tallest, if you actually count him as a man. I'm not sure that would be the best word to use, and I could think of a lot of others which might suit it better. So before I could even react to all of that, a police officer followed behind the monster, also slapping his hand on my hood for a second while making that turn. When the cop did it, my car didn't shake though. The big furry guy was much bigger and much stronger than the policeman, so I'm pretty sure he was not a human being at all. I saw his hand as it leaned on my car though, and it was very much a hand. But it was not very much a human hand. It reminded me of a mix between an animal paw and a human hand, and the fingernails were not fingernails at all, but claws instead. When it passed me, I saw the beast man look back at his pursuer, and that was not a mask I was looking at. It was a head not so much like a bear, but more like a wolf or a dog. Its ears stood up pointed and were not rounded, so it looked far more canine than ursine. Its tongue was hanging out as it was panting while it ran. If you looked at any part of it other than the head, you might think, as I was considering, that this could be a human being in a costume. The head looked too real to me though. I turned to watch the creature running away from the officer down the block. The cop was getting winded pretty soon, while that big hairy canine-looking so-and-so literally dropped down to all fours and started running even faster than before. I sat there, finally realizing that that had been a very strange thing to see, and that I couldn't understand it. What kind of creature can run like a man, then drop to all fours, and run like a dog? And how the heck did that get into Manhattan? The car behind me beeped, alerting me to the fact that I was supposed to be driving, not gawking. I resumed my trip back to Jersey, making a note to check online when I got home about an escaped animal in Manhattan. Was the circus in town? Do they even have a circus anymore? Who would have an animal like that in New York City? It sounded to me like a King Kong scenario. Maybe the creature was exhibited in a show and then broke free. The next morning I looked at the hood of my car for handprints of either the monster or the officer. I was hoping to find both and compare them, but I couldn't see either. I contacted my ex-wife's obnoxious brother, who happens to be a police officer, and I asked him how I could find handprints on my car. He surprised me by coming over and performing the dusting himself, for reasons I am still concerned about. At any rate, he found only my own fingerprints on the car, or prints that seemed to match mine. None over on that corner of the car where both running figures slammed their palms down. I searched online for a few days for the story of some large animal running through Manhattan at night, but so far I haven't found anything on it. I thought I'd send it into your show and see if anyone else responds with more info, so I can finally understand what that was that I was witness to. I hope someone can explain to me what was happening when I saw the Lincoln Tunnel Terror. Lost in thought, your contributions are appreciated and valued so. Your monthly donations keep us alive and that will be remembered, you know. Please join us in thanking Lost in Thought for being a top tier channel member for well over a year now. Lost in Thought gets to see our secret uncensored videos, and if you'd like to see them too, just listen to what our international spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman has to say about it. Hank? Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.